Hi guys, it's Shanae and welcome back to my channel. Sorry I'm late. Um, I was struggling with the audio, so I really hope that it's okay now. Please let me know. But yeah, okay. Sorry, I got sidetracked first thing. But yeah, today I am continuing my read along for ErHa, Volume 3. Volume 3? Yes, Volume 3. Sorry, scatterbrain. Hi guys. Um, Yay! I'm glad you're here. Um, but yeah, so sorry about that. It was an absolute mess of a day. I won't bore you guys with the details, but suffice to say, it just didn't work out as smoothly as I was intending. And yeah, I want to give like 3 minutes, just in case there are other people who get the notification who want to join. Um, But yeah, I will be going over my normal 2 hours just to kind of make up the little bit of time that I unfortunately had to make you guys wait. Again, I'm really sorry. Um, but yeah, I'm kind of excited. I have my tissues here with me, just in case. You never know with this volume, especially I feel. And yeah, we're gonna do the 10-minute break on the hour as usual. We're gonna try and do at least 40 pages. We shall see how it goes. But I think that's more or less it. I can't think of anything else that I need to say. Like and subscribe, I suppose, is one of the other things I can say. Um, but yeah, again, I hope the audio is okay. And let me open up the volume so long, and then we can get started. Mm. Okay, so we're at the top of page 232. If anyone wants to follow along with their own novels. And yeah, I think we can get started. I also do have tea here with me for anyone who is new. Because unfortunately, I seem to have a dry throat. So, anyway, okay, let us get going. The scholar quirked. Oh, hold on. Volume 5's cover is so pretty. What volume is your favorite? Um, I'm a little bit torn because volume 4 looks happier, but this one is just so stunning, and I just love the colors and everything like that, so I think it might be this one, even though it's also the most tragic of the lot. Anyway, but I think this feels blasphemous, out of all the non Motion Tongshu things that I have, ErHa is my favorite covers so far. Yeah, so Motion Tongshu's ones excluded, I think ErHa's covers so far have just been my absolute favorite. But Guardian Volume 2 also looks very pretty. Okay, anyway, sorry. The scholar quirked a brow. And? No, Moran shook his head like a rattle drum, and his face turned even redder. Nothing. The scholar shot him a curious glance, but luckily the light in the tavern was dim, and he couldn't see how red Moran's face was. He dipped his brush in the ink again and asked, "Usual attire?" He likes to wear white, with his hair pulled up with a jade crown, or else in a high ponytail. Moran considered, then added, "He also wears his hair down sometimes, and when he does, he looks really—" "Don't say beautiful again." The scholar was at the end of his rope. "Okay, handsome then." The scholar had no words. With that painful ordeal behind them, the drawing was finally complete. Moran blew the ink dry and lifted the paper to examine the work. It wasn't as handsome or beautiful as the Chuaning, and didn't really look completely like him, but for his purposes it was possible. He smiled. Many thanks, Professor. It's great. I've just about drawn Pan-An family, Shiji, and Diao Chang, sorry. Any other legendary beauties I should add? Moran laughed. After I find Shizun, I'll be sure to thank you again properly. They drank and chatted until the skies grew dark, and when it came time to part ways in front of the tavern, Moran set off with Chuaning's portrait in hand. According to the scholar, there was a place on the 5th Street called Tailwind Hall that made a business of investigating all kinds of things for Nanke Town's new arrivals. He headed there without delay. I mean, I understand that, like, he can't just run off immediately after the portrait is finished because that's really, like, rude. But the time limit that I feel we have, like, the inbuilt ticking time bomb, it just has me nervous. I love Volume 3's cover 2, so pretty. 2 has the best covers. Yes, they are really beautiful. I'm both so excited and terrified for the rest of them. Besides Tailwind Hall, a banner bearing a black serpent floated lightly in the breeze. When Moran pushed the door open and strode through, he was greeted by the sight of a long counter that stretched across the main hall. A dozen odd ghosts in ochre red robes sat behind it, each wearing a wooden mask painted with a snarling face that concealed their real features from view. Well, that sounds trustworthy. Before every masked ghost stood a long, meandering line of the deceased, bearing assorted expressions and various requests. Hundreds of white wax candles hovered near the rafters of the building, casting overlapping shadows upon the overlapping dead. Oh, that's nice. The place was packed, and ghosts came and went without pause. Sir, can you help me find my younger brother? His name is Jiang Bai, from Guzu. He was 21 years old when he died. You have a portrait? No, that's fine, but it'll cost 10 times as much. Farther along the counter. Look, laddie. The masked ghost cleared her throat, her voice clear and crisp. Ah, sorry, didn't know you were a miss. Missy, it's like this. So when I died, that wife of mine said she definitely won't remarry, but I've been seeing her and my little bro making eyes at one another a while now, and I just can't accept it. So can you help me check and see if she's been a proper widow up there, or if she ran off with my little bro? Oh my word. Here's our price list for the investigation of matters in the living world. Please take a look. And on the other side, excuse me, I liked a girl when I was alive, but she was from a wealthy family. I was just a poor scholar who couldn't even pass the imperial exam, and I didn't have the guts to confess to her, so I didn't stand a chance. She got married eventually. At first, I was happy for her, but it turned out that the guy was already married. The gossip. The ghost sighed. There was an accident, and she passed on before me. I want to ask about two things. The first is her current whereabouts, and the second is if we'll be fated in our next life. We can certainly investigate matters of the next life. However, the cost will not be in money, but in years of your lifespan from your next life. As for the lady's whereabouts, please provide her name and portrait. That's grim. I don't know how to feel about that. Oh, okay. I have her portrait here. Her name is Yao, given name Lan. There was a ghost chattering away like this at every counter. Even when their bodies had long rotted, they couldn't relinquish their worldly attachments. Moran walked a circuit around the room, clutching his lantern and peering left and right. He noted that in exchange for answers, the people of Tailwind Hall only took two things in payment: money or years of lifespan. I hate where this is going already. He had no money, but if he let them take from his lifespan, they might discover he was a living person who had infiltrated the underworld. True. He grew increasingly fretful and cursed Master Huaijie for not having the foresight to give him some paper money for such a situation. He looked again at the price list. The cost of simple inquiry after someone wasn't particularly high. Moran made up his mind and ran back towards the tavern. It took a bit of searching to locate the scholar again, and every ounce of his persuasive power to convince the man to lend Moran a few meagre silvers. Money in hand, Moran returned to Tailwind Hall. He waited in line for half an age before it was finally his turn. I'm looking for someone, Moran said earnestly. Here is his portrait. He handed Chuaning's portrait over and was about to say more, but unexpectedly the person at the counter took only a single glance of the portrait before chuckling and rolling the scroll back up. Why are you looking for him? Huh? Moran was taken back. You can tell where he is just by looking at the painting? Of course, but first tell me, why are you looking for him? He's someone I know. The masked ghost shot him another look. Wait here, please, he said. He leaned over to the colleague next to him, and the two shared a hushed discussion. When he turned back to Moran, his tone had warmed considerably. Since you're Sir Chu's acquaintance, no payment is necessary. I'm vaguely. Never mind, let me just finish this chapter and then we'll talk. The ghost rose to his feet and beckoned Moran forward. Come along then, follow me upstairs. Okay, so either one of two things has happened. Has happened here. Option one, Chuaning is just so amazing that he's immediately earned the respect of the ghosts in the area, or he's like helped them while they were alive and they're super nice to him because of it. Or, alternatively, they mistook him for the original person who looked like Chuaning 200 years ago. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. I just want to get another sip. Okay. Chapter 108, Shizun's Earth Soul. Moran followed the ghosts upstairs without a clue as to what was happening. The worn wooden stairs creaked beneath his feet with every step. He couldn't resist asking, You call him Sir Chu? That's right. Lord Yanluo himself sent him up to manage this place. He's our superior. Let's see. Moran swallowed his surprise and said nothing. Here we are. The ghost stopped before a half-moon-shaped doorway on the second floor. The carved vermilion door stood slightly ajar. The ghost knocked lightly. So Chu, there's an acquaintance of yours here looking for you. There was a beat of silence. Then a voice drifted out, gentle like wine warming on a stove, like silky hair across a pillow. An acquaintance? Him again? I've already said I don't wish to see him. Please tell him to leave. The ghost cleared his throat. So Chu misunderstands. It's not him this time. Ooh? Who's the him? Is it your Lord Yanluo himself? I'm way too intrigued. I should just keep reading. But who else is there? Another moment of silence. No matter, come in. The room was simple and elegant. The furnishings were plain, such that the space seemed a little bare, but the floor was covered by a soft, luxurious rug. Moran's foot sank into the pile as he stepped inside, and he caught a whiff of the sharp scent of furs, completely at odds with that wild smell of the figure standing before the window, pruning along a flower branch. His long inky hair draped loose over his white robes and sweeping sleeves, and the vivid red buds on their branches quivered lightly where he held it between his delicate fingers. Perhaps it was the rule here in Tailwind Hall, for he too wore a dark blue mask with bird fangs and bulging eyes. Yet on this man's face, even such a ferocious mask looked somehow gentler. He trimmed the excess branches, then gathered them up and discarded them, before at last turning around. Moran's throat felt dry. The exchange between the masked ghost and Chuaning a second ago had left him with a vague sense of perplexed unease. He didn't know what faculties the soul had lost, if Chuaning didn't remember him. As he stood fretting, the man laid down the pruning shears and stepped towards him. Moran, a man undaunted by heaven and earth, found himself flustered and agitated, sweat covering his back. Shizun. The man paused, coming to a stop before Moran. Moran heard something like a chuckle from behind the mask. Shizun? He asked. Perhaps the little Gongzi has the wrong person? Just as he suspected, just as he feared. Moran's heart dropped like an enormous rock into the endless abyss, dragging him down with it. He stared at the man before him, at a complete loss for words. When no response came, the man placed his slender black hand over the boldly painted mask and removed it, revealing the elegant and composed face beneath. Moran felt that 1,000-pound rock disappear in an instant. He stared at the man's bare face, astonished. Without the slightest hesitation, he blurted, "Chushan?" Yay! Okay, I'm excited. I'm really excited. But also now we have the confirmation that Chushan and Chuaning aren't the same person. It was a small wonder that the person downstairs had mistaken the portrait Chushan and Chuaning. Doesn't make sense to me, but okay, let me just reread it. It was a small wonder that the person downstairs had mistaken the portrait. Chushan and Chuaning were nearly identical, except that Chushan was gentle, where Chuaning was cold. Only someone extremely familiar with one of them would be able to tell the two apart. Someone like Moran. The man before him now was indeed Chushan, the Gongzi of Lin'an City, whom he had seen in the illusion of 200 years ago. Moran had spoken his name without thinking, but the real Chushan had never met Moran. He blinked in surprise, then smiled. "You actually do know me?" Moran waved his hand frantically. No, I got the wrong person, but I do also know you." He peered curiously at the man before him as he spoke. Chushan had died hundreds of years ago, but he had yet to be reborn. Presumably, this was due to the task assigned to him by Yang Luo, which allowed him to exist outside of the cycle of reincarnation, at least for now. Running into Chuaning's ancestor here was the last thing Moran had expected. He found the experience quite bizarre. "I see," Chushan nodded, then continued with a smile. "Who is the little Gongzi looking for? Since fate brought you up these stairs, I will help you search. Otherwise, who knows how long it may take to find the person. Nanka Town is a vast place, home to millions of ghosts." Moran had planned to quickly explain the misunderstanding and then ran back downstairs to ask for a redo on the divination. He hadn't expected Chushan, as warm-hearted in death as he had been in life, to offer his personal assistance. Just because of that, now I'm apprehensive. Hi! But yeah, I'm like suddenly very skeptical that maybe he isn't the nice person that we remembered. I hope I'm wrong. He joyfully accepted. "Thank you, so true. I'd appreciate that." So saying, he handed over the portrait. Chushan unrolled it and took a look, then smiled again. No wonder the people downstairs were confused. There really is quite a resemblance. "What's his name?" "Chuaning," Moran said. "His name is Chuaning." "His surname is Chu as well? What a coincidence." Moran's heart leapt. Could it be that he's related to you? I'm not sure. Investigating matters in the living world requires a visit to the Ghost King, and I have a death grudge against the Ninth King and refuse to beg any favors of him. I know nothing of matters in the living world. The Ghost King in question was, of course, the very same who had broken through the barrier at Lin An and slaughtered Chushan's entire family back then. Fair enough. Even Chushan, composed as he was, couldn't help the complicated expression that rose on his face at the mention of the old wound. Moran had thought to use this opportunity to confirm the relationship between Chu Wanling and Chushan, but coming up against this, he could only shake his head. That's a pity. Chushan smiled wanly and said no more. He turned to fetch a gold-plated compass engraved with yin-yang patterns from the shelf, then invited Moran to take a seat. This thing can tell us where he is? 8 or 9 times out of 10, yes. Oh great, there's like a side possibility that it's not. That's wonderful. What about the other 1 or 2? Same wavelength. The energy of some people's souls can be strange, Chushan explained, so there's always a possibility the compass can't locate them, but it's rare. The little Gongzi would have to be quite unlucky. The divination was set up, and the little golden needle within the compass spun to point shakily towards the north, but a moment later it swiveled to point south, then suddenly east, suddenly west. Moran's luck sucks. And in the end settled on spinning round and round. Chushan eyed it, speechless. So, Moran asked cautiously, what does that mean? Chushan cleared his throat, looking a little embarrassed. I'm afraid the little Gongzi is indeed quite unlucky. Moran eyed it, now also speechless. Truth be told, Moran had always had rather bad luck. He just knew it wouldn't go so smoothly. He sighed and thanked Chushan, preparing to wade back into the sea of people and resume his search for Chu Wanling. But just then, the compass stopped its mad whirling, its needle pointing shakily in one direction, as if not too sure. Then, a fraction of a second later, nudged itself a hair more to the side. Little Gongzi called out, just a moment. Moran stopped in his tracks, holding his breath as he stood by the table and stared at the compass. The needle swiveled left and right, refusing to hold steady, but it more or less pointed out a general direction. I think it's Chu Wanling's soul that's sending its confused signals, potentially. Is it that weird? Not weird exactly, but it is rather unusual. Chushan gazed at the compass, his brows drawing tighter still. I'm hating the way I'm saying compass. I don't know why. My brain just didn't want to do the flatter sound. Where was I? He seems to be in 2 places at once. Oh, it's because of the lantern he has. That makes sense. Moran was startled. How could that be? At present, Chuaning's cognizant soul was still within his body, and his human soul was inside the soul-catching lantern. That meant there should only be one, his earth soul. Okay, but wouldn't the needle maybe sense the one in the lantern? Left in the underworld, how could Chuaning appear in 2 places simultaneously? In any case, Chushan continued, compass is picking up one to the southeast and another to the northeast. I recommend the little Gongzi check in both directions. It's possible some magic is affecting the compass and preventing it from pinpointing the right location. Heart filled with anxiety, Moran thanked Chushan and again sped out of a tailwind hole, heading east. He ran eastward for some time. It says from some time, but I'm assuming that's a typo. Until he came to a fork in the road. His footfalls screeched to a halt. Southeast or northeast? Oh, why does this feel so symbolic? Moran lifted the soul-calling lantern anxiously, but after a few moments, as he stared into the lantern that held Chuaning's human soul, he felt a vague and peculiar feeling in his heart. It seemed to vacillate, drawing closer and then retreating, sometimes strong, sometimes weak. He followed it down narrow roads and dark alleys, and the farther he walked, the stronger it grew. He has like a sixth sense for Chuaning, and I'm here for it. He felt as though Chuaning's earth soul was calling the lantern in his hand, or rather, calling him towards a certain place. At last, Moran came to a stop before an old, two-story wooden building. He looked up, his gaze sweeping across the massive plaque above the door. Ailing Souls Sanitarium. Exposure to sun and wind had peeled away the plaque's black paint, and the red on the raised lettering had fared no better, flaking off to reveal the molding wood beneath. Okay, but there's sun and wind in the underworld? That's advanced. And his heart stuttered in his chest. These three words only increased his unease. Ailing souls? What did that mean? Was this why Chushan's compass hadn't worked? He pushed open the door and went in, stepping over the tall threshold. He got his answer soon enough. Inside were hundreds of beds filled with hundreds of unconscious souls. A dozen sun ghosts wearing white masks were making rounds, channeling spiritual energy into the bed's occupants. The so-called Ailing Soul Sanitarium was, it seemed, an underworld infirmary. Moran searched for the ghost doctor overseeing the sanitarium and found him in the inner rooms. He cupped his hands respectfully towards him. The doctor was tremendously busy and cut him off impatiently. Prescription pickup is on the second floor. Examination queue is to the left. Then where do I go if I'm looking for someone? Looking for someone's over. Huh? Looking for someone? Moran showed the doctor Chuaning's portrait. Have you seen him? The ghost doctor reached for the painting and looked it over, then peered up at Moran. Through the holes in his white mask, his eyes were filled with pity. A relative? That's right. His earth soul is damaged. The ghost doctor pointed up the stairs. He's in the innermost bay up there. I'm afraid this type of illness can't be treated. The most we can do is delay the inevitable. You should go see him. Moran started. Damaged? Damaged how? Who can say? The cycle of reincarnation is an agonizing thing. It's possible his soul was damaged during his last few reincarnations, or since he's a cultivator in this lifetime, perhaps he had a chi deviation that damaged his soul. Whatever the case, it's no longer whole. How am I supposed to know what happened? Great. Thank you so much for making us feel so good about everything. Then Moran asked apprehensively, then how would having a damaged earth soul affect someone? Affect? The ghost doctor thought a moment. It's not a huge issue, since it's only one of the three souls that's incomplete. It won't affect his ability to reincarnate. If anything, in his next life he'll have a shorter lifespan, worse luck, or a weaker constitution. Moran listened quietly. He wasn't exactly happy to hear that, but there was little he could do. He thanked the ghost doctor and headed upstairs. The second story of the sanitarium was less densely packed than the first, which had been so crowded it was hard to breathe. The souls here were those that were unlikely to ever wake up, so perhaps there wasn't much need to watch over them. Only one doctor stood by an entrance hall, napping leisurely on a rattan chair. Moran left him where he was and walked straight in. Though the space was large, there was no more than 20 sick beds in it. The beds were laid out under their rosewood windows, and white screens between each offered some privacy. It was silent as the grave. The floor creaked beneath Moran's feet, and his eyes landed on the innermost bay. It was nice. It was next to a half-moon-shaped door that led out to an open balcony. Moonlight poured in through the thin silk curtains that drifted in the breeze. I'm wondering if didn't it mention already that Chuaning's constitution was weak? Um, so maybe his constitution, like while he was alive, so maybe his soul was already damaged before he became Chuaning. Hmm. I wonder if he maybe is the reincarnation of Chushan's son. No, but his son survived. Do you think? I don't know. Imagine if like he and Chushan share the same soul, but they don't know it. That would be very interesting. Um, where will we? There were 20 odd ailing souls in this room, yet for some reason Moran knew with searing clarity exactly where to go. Perhaps it was the soul calling lantern showing him the way. Whatever the reason, he walked directly to the innermost bed without so much as a sideways glance, and came to a stop in that pure hazy moonlight. He lifted the curtain. The last piece of Chuaning's soul lay within. His eyes were closed and his face was colorless. He looked no different from the body resting in Frost Sky Hall. Despite having found him, despite the hope of rebirth that was now within reach, Moran's heart ached and his nose stung as he gazed down at that frail, blood-stained figure. He set the soul-calling lantern down at the head of the bed. Then he sat on the bed and reached out to gently hold the soul's ice-cold hand. But this soul was unlike the human soul he'd met before. Maybe the damage had been too severe. Moran's fingers passed right through him to land on the clear, white sheets below. The body was incorporeal. He couldn't touch Chuaning's earth soul. Moran felt unbearably lost and pained. If one more thing had gone wrong, if Master Hajia hadn't come, if Chuaning's soul had been just a little more damaged, if his Shizun had despaired and refused to see him, he bent down. Um, no, his son did not. Right, I was like, I can't remember if his son survived or not. But yeah, not. Thank you. Thank you for that awful reminder, because now I just had a flashback to that. Oh, okay. Anyway, sorry. Um, he bent down, and though he knew that he wouldn't be able to press his forehead to Chuaning's, he couldn't help it. When he closed his eyes and leaned over the bed like he was embracing that faint, fragile earth soul, Shizun, Ran's body overlapped with Chuaning's soul, the moonlight spilling over them, indistinct and indistinguishable. Moran heaved a long sigh. His heart was heavy and bitter. He had seen Chuaning's body, then his human soul, and now the sickly earth soul. Each stirred something different in him. He had knelt before the body, his sins and guilt nearly tearing him apart. He had repented before the human soul, had held Chuaning's hand and begged him to return. But the earth soul, he tried to hold him, yet he couldn't reach him, couldn't touch him. He was at once gripped by a bottomless dread. This was what he deserved. He was laden with so many sins. His hands were bathed in blood. What merit, what right did he have to accompany this man again, to stand by his side? Well, it's good that you're reflecting. I'm not keen for the self-loathing that I sense coming, but good that you're reflecting. Moran's eyes remained closed, the tears clinging to his lashes, soaked into the flimsy pillow. He'd once believed the heavens were unkind to him. Now that seemed like an absurd joke. That wasn't the case at all. It turned out that the heavens had been very kind to him indeed. It was his own heart that was unkind, that rendered everything dark and gloomy. It was his own fault. He suddenly realized that he had once walked a path of no return. He wanted to turn back. He wanted to use the rest of his life to make amends, use the rest of his life to set things right. But he didn't know if doing all that would even be enough to bring him back to the start. Forget Tashi and Jin. Forget being emperor of the human realm. He didn't want any of it. All he wanted was to lead a proper life, to be the kind of righteous person that Chuaning had always hoped he would be. It was said that recognizing your mistakes and changing for the better was what counted most, but he had sinned so deeply. How long would it take to atone for his sins? Perhaps he would never escape this endless remorse, even until the day he died. After all, a scar cut through the water could return to even smoothness, but a wound carved into a tree would forever remain. Shizun, after sitting for a long time, immersed in the light of the moon, immersed in Chuaning's nearly transparent soul, Moran spoke as though coaxing a child. Come on, let's go home. He straightened and picked up the soul-calling lantern. Moran recited the incantation wordlessly, and the earth soul was drawn inside, its faint silhouette vanishing into the lantern. Then Moran waited. He waited and waited until the earth soul and human soul had fused completely. Then he waited some more, but still nothing happened. Moran's face paled. What the heck? Chuaning's earth soul and human soul had merged. Wasn't he supposed to see the path to bring Chuaning back to the living world? Was Master Huaju's spell malfunctioning? I'm guessing you need to go the direction that the compass was also pointing. There's a part of me that wonders, and this is like, pure fan fiction at this point. I don't see it actually being true, but I just need to say it because, like, I kind of like the idea in a sense. It's weird. But with regards to Chuaning's soul that was, like, distorted, there's a part of me that wonders if maybe somehow, some way, Moran has part of Chuaning's soul in him. Because that would explain why he's able to kind of like sense where Chuaning is. And also why the, what was it, ruler? The ruler, like, was so confused because it's like trying to identify the fate of two different souls. So it's like giving the fate of one and then giving the fate of the other and confusing the ruler. But yeah, that's just a weird theory that came to mind. Chushan's son died pretty horribly. Yeah. Yeah, he very much did. I can't believe I forgot that, but I think I just kind of blacked it out of my mind a little. Okay, let's see what is happening. Page 100, chapter 109, Shizun's second Earth Soul. There we go. Moran's head was numb. His thoughts a blur of white noise. His hands and feet felt like ice as he hugged Chuaning's soul to himself and descended the stairs in a fog. Doctor, you again? What is it now? You're sure the one upstairs is my Shizun's earth soul, right? The ghost doctor was rather annoyed. Of course it is. How could I get something like that wrong? Moran refused to give up. Could it be his cognizant soul or what? The ghost doctor clicked his tongue in irritation. A person has 3 souls: earth, cognizant, and human. I've practiced medicine here for 150 years. If I couldn't even tell souls apart, Lord Yanluo would have kicked me back into the wheel of reincarnation long ago. Moran pressed his lips into a thin line, but then a vague idea unfurled in his mind. Doctor, in your 150 years, have you ever seen someone with 2 earth souls? What's wrong with you? The ghost doctor snapped, cross. Looks to me like your head's not working. Maybe I should take your pulse. What's that gonna show you? He shouldn't have a pulse. Of course, Moran couldn't actually let the ghost doctor take his pulse. Master Huazhe might have cast an enchantment on him, but if he wasn't careful... Why am I struggling so much tonight? If he wasn't careful, the jig would be up. He offered a hasty apology and fled the ailing soul's sanitarium, clutching the lantern bearing Chuaning's human and earth souls. It was always dim in the ghost realm. The only way to tell day from night was to look up at the sky. If a lukewarm sun hovered behind a layer of murky mist and heavy red clouds, it was day. If a cold moon hung high above, it was night. Right now it was night, and the roads were gradually emptying of traffic. Moran walked through the streets alone, with the soul-calling lantern, his eyes trained on the ground. He didn't know what to do, and the farther he walked, the more helpless and alone he felt. In his childhood, such helplessness and uncertainty had once been his daily companion. He found that facing these feelings again now rattled him. Moran thought of the people he'd known back when he was scraping by at the pleasure house. In the end, the house of drunken Jade had gone up in flames. They had all died, save for him. He counted the years. Everyone, aside from his mom, had probably yet to be reincarnated. If he kept wandering like this, there was no telling whom he might run into. Then he thought of Shumon. He thought of his angry bellows as he tried to tear the soul-calling lantern from Moran's hands. He had called him a Scrooge. What right do you have? Have you no shame? Hugging the lantern close, Moran's footsteps slowed until finally he stopped next to a wall. Despite his best efforts, his eyes had grown red. He hung his head and gazed at the gentle golden flame. Shizun, he muttered in a small voice, could it be that you really don't want to come back with me? No, unfortunately, I don't think that's the issue. The flame didn't answer. It continued to burn silently. Moran stood for a long time before he managed to rescue his calm. The underworld was immense, and he didn't know where he could go or to whom. All at once he remembered Chushan and sped back towards Tailwind Hall as though he had grasped a lifeline. By the time he arrived, Tailwind Hall was preparing to close, and a masked ghost was shuttering the door and locking it up for the night. Moran hastily called out to stop him, a note of pleading in his voice. Sorry, but please wait. You again? The ghost was the same who had led him upstairs earlier. What are you doing back here? Sorry to trouble you, but it's urgent. Moran had run too fast. He panted for breath, his eyes bright and anxious. He swallowed and said, voice hoarse, I want to see Sir Chushan again. Chushan was staring absently at a branch of high-tongue blossoms arranged in a slender white porcelain vase. He looked up, startled at Moran's sudden return. Why did the little Gongzi come back? Were you unable to find him? I found him, Moran replied, but I... Chushan saw at a glance how tense and anxious this young man was. and correctly guessed that whatever troubled him must be a difficult subject. He invited Moran in and closed the door behind him. "Have a seat." Moran, worried that Chushan might notice something amiss if he continued to hold the soul-calling lantern, stowed it away in his Gushin pouch. Chushan was no malicious ghost, but the matter of a living person sneaking into the underworld was best kept secret from all ghosts if possible. Yeah. The little Gongzo went southeast. Chushan thought for a moment. It was the ailing soul's sanitarium, wasn't it? Moran nodded. He considered his words before continuing. I saw him at the ailing soul's sanitarium, but it was an incomplete earth soul, that it couldn't move or speak. He even looked different from the other ghosts. He was half transparent, and he could be seen but not touched. Damaged earth souls are often like that. Chushan was somber. Sometimes a soul like that can scatter, if agitated, never to be gathered again. Moran chewed on his lip, then ventured. The doctor there said people with incomplete souls will exhibit certain impairments in life, but the person I'm looking for, he was just fine while alive, so I was wondering if there might be some mistake. He paused, lifting his head to look towards Chushan. So, Chu, is it possible for someone to have two earth souls? Chushan was taken aback. Two earth souls? Unlike the doctor at the ailing soul sanitarium, who had immediately shot him down, Chushan mulled his hypothesis over, carefully with downcast eyes. Eventually he said, I suppose it isn't impossible. A tremor ran through Moran's body, and his head snapped up. His eyes were bright in the room's dim candlelight. Really? Chushan inclined his head in affirmation. Normally, an individual only has 3 ethereal souls and 7 corporeal spirits, but I once knew a woman with 2 cognizant souls. That's interesting. That might also explain why Chuaning has 3 holy weapons. Was able to have 3 holy weapons. Can you tell me anything more about her? Chushan shook his head, and his lashes drooped lower and quivered slightly. He took a moment to steady himself before saying, I would prefer not to. Those events are long past. The woman is suffering in the 7th level of hell now. When Yanluo finds someone with an abnormal soul, he sends them to the 7th level to be slowly peeled apart. Excuse me? I thought the stakes were high before, now it just shot up another notch. Oh well. Hearing this made Moran even more fretful. In the low light, he didn't even see the pain in Chushan's eyes as he pressed on. Why did that woman have the extra cognizant soul? Normally, people only need to gather their 3 souls after the 7th day. So if someone had an extra soul, then would all 4 souls need to be reunited? That is likely the case. Then the woman you mentioned, she was used by the 9th king in death. She was forced back to the living world. Chushan paused, and the slender fingers rested on his knees, slowly balling its fists. To the living world, where she ate her own child alive. I was about to say, is it his wife? But I feel like that basically confirms it. He abruptly recalled the past events he had witnessed in Yunnan, within the illusion at the Peach Blossom Springs. With the start, he realized that this woman of whom Chushan spoke was in truth his wife, and that these were his most earth-rending, earth, earth-rending memories. Could it be that Chushan had put off reincarnation and stayed in Nantha town because of his wife? Was he waiting for her to be stripped of the extra soul and return to him from the 7th level so that they could reincarnate together? Rand couldn't bear to pry any more than he already had. Look, I get loving your wife, but I'm really sorry. I don't know if I would want to potentially meet up with my wife again in the next life if I were him after she ate our baby. Like, it just seems a little bit intense. Personally, I don't know. Um, said no more on it either. To mention something like this again in just this handful of bold words, ate her own child, even after 200 years, even as a ghost, the jut of his throat still trembled. Chushan closed his eyes. The woman's soul became scrambled and torn, and fused with the child's cognizant soul. I kind of suspected that might be what happened. There was a long pause. So the extra soul is actually that child's cognizant soul. The child's soul became stuck within hers, and the two assimilated until they were completely inseparable. In death as in life, this person swallowed his own pain in order to help others. Moran felt horrible, but he couldn't say so outright, so he simply said, "You don't have to say any more. I get it now. I tell you all this so you may understand. If the true Bongse you're looking for really has two Earth souls, then it's highly likely that one of them was not originally his." Moran turned this over in his mind. Is it not possible that it was on Earth that it was one Earth soul split into two? It's possible, but not in your case. Why not? I've seen a soul split in two as well, Chushan explained, but that's another story. Such a thing generally only occurs when an individual has sinned so deeply and killed so wantonly that their souls cannot bear and shatter. Even then, the one that shatters is always the human soul, the one responsible for morality and humanity, never the earth soul or the cognizant soul. There was a long silence. I see, Moran muttered. The moment he heard the words, sinned so deeply and killed so wantonly, he had already concluded that this scenario couldn't possibly apply to Shuani. Just because Meat Bun was like, this couldn't possibly be Chuaning. I'm like, could it possibly be Chuaning? I think it might be. I'm scared. Okay. Um but as for himself, he did wonder, when in this life he truly met his end and came to the underworld, would his human soul shatter in two? Would he get his just deserts? Besides, Chuan besides Chuan I keep wanting to say Chuaning, but it's Chushan. Sorry about that. Besides, Chushan added, if it really was one soul split in two, the other half of the Earth's soul would have been similarly affected and been sent to the alien soul sanitarium as well. That's a fair point. Since the little Gongzi found only one damaged Earth soul, I suspect the other is a complete healthy soul. At this remark, things clicked into place. Moran brightened immediately. Thank you so much, Sir Chu, he said in a rush. Then I'll go search again right away. Very good. In addition to pointing towards the Ailing Soul Sanitarium earlier, the compass also pointed northeast. The little Gongza should try going that way. However, Nanke town is large, and there are so many ghosts coming and going as they await reincarnation. Chushan sighed. Moran saw the shadow of pity in those gentle eyes. He already knew what Chushan meant to say. Vastness of Nanke town, millions of wandering souls. Even with a direction to search in, finding one particular earth soul was easier said than done. If two people were not fated to meet, it wouldn't matter if the streets were lit as bright as day. They might still pass like ships in the night, one to the east and one to the west, never once noticing, never once seeing. And with the underworld as dark and silent as it was now, the task was nigh impossible. But Chushan was a gentle soul. He lifted a hand and clapped Moran on the shoulder. The little Gongza possesses such heartfelt sincerity. I'm sure you will meet again. This man looked so like Chu Running. As he spoke, a bead of wax dripped down the candle, and the flame flickered, obscuring his features and shadows. In the gloom, Moran seemed to see Chuaning's face, and a moment of gentleness, seemed to hear Chuaning's voice say they would meet again. Guys. Okay, I'm gonna pause it here because it's 2 past, and then we shall reconvene at 12 past and continue until we're at a good stopping point. Okay, we are back. I want to try and do at least 20 more pages, but we'll see how the hour treats us. Okay, let me grab my pillow again. And I got myself some new tea. So I'm excited about that. Okay, I hope you guys are ready. I hope I'm ready, and also I hope the audio is still okay, and that I would just please stop bumping the mic. That would be great. Sorry about that. Okay. It's not a good start. Tears sprang to Moran's eyes despite himself. He swiftly bowed his head and clasped his hands in a gesture of respect. His voice was hoarse. Really, thank you so much. But Chushan made no reply. Even after Moran turned and left, closing the door behind him, he still stood staring after him, a hint of bewilderment in his phoenix eyes. Were those tears he saw in the young man's eyes? Ghosts couldn't cry. Had he been mistaken? Or, oh frick. He turned to glance over his shoulder at that vase with its quiet blooming branch of high-tongued blossoms. Flowers from the living world couldn't withstand the yin energy of the underworld. Even after his careful tending, a petal had still fluttered down to land on the aged wood of the table. Chushan stepped over and picked up that vibrant petal. Held between his fingertips, it withered and crumpled away in a heartbeat, scattering into dust. God? No, 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 Chushan. Sir Chu? No sooner had he spoken than a masked ghost entered and stood respectfully to the side. Chushan didn't turn. He gazed at the high-tongued blossoms and asked in a soft voice, "Has that man come to Tailwind Hall recently?" "No, he hasn't. It's been the same as always. A branch of high-tongued blossoms every 10 days. He dares not come to Tailwind Hall himself, and always has another delivered for him." Interesting. It sounds like Chushan has a suitor. Chushan remained quiet. "What is it, sir? Was there something suspicious about that gongzo just now? If that man dares send people to disturb your peace, you can always ask Lord Yanlo to—" "No." Chushan shook off his daze and interrupted his subordinate, turning to the ghost with a faint smile. He exhaled heavily. "It's nothing. I doubt that man sent him. And even if he did, the child came only to look for someone. It was nothing to do with me. But what if he was sent by that man? Why go to the trouble? He was no party to that wrong." Chushan stood quietly next to the flowering branch, his robes the color of snow. "Let him be." I'm getting weird signals here. Because a part of me is like, is that man the seventh Ghost King? Or the ninth Ghost King? The guy that's responsible for the death of his entire town? Or is it somehow the guy that has the chess piece situation going on? Like the guy that's basically the new version of Moran. Or the old version of Moran, sorry. The streets were desolate. Moran left Tailwind Hall and walked northeast. He took Chuaning's portrait door to door, but it was like trying to find a needle at the bottom of the sea. Those he showed the portrait to were quick to wave their hands in dismissal. Some didn't look at all before brushing past. "The guy in the drawing, never seen him before. Haven't seen him, haven't seen him. Don't disturb my business. Out of my way, so damn annoying. Do you have any idea what time it is? Go away. What portrait? Get out of my face." The residents of Nanka town may have been ghosts, but these ghosts had yet to relinquish the emotions and desires of life. Living together as they did, most had gradually settled back into the familiar rhythm of their days in the mortal world. Over those 8 to 10 long years, they would seek out friends or relatives, or else adopt a dead cat or a dog. That's a weird thought. In short, they carried on living as they had before death, and so, though they didn't need to sleep, they would still lie in their beds to rest out of habit when the moon climbed high up in the sky. Thus, the night closed in around him. Even fewer people were willing to talk, and no one had any clues to share. Moran walked down that long, endless street stretching to the northeast. He knocked on every door and visited every house, ducking his head and smiling apologetically. I already told you I saw it wrong. I gave it more thought, and the guy I saw wasn't actually the one in the drawing. Leave me alone. Interesting. The bearded man was trying to close the door, ready to retire for the night with his wife and kids of the underworld. Moran had run into the man on the street as he'd been returning home earlier, and had questioned him with the portrait. The man had considered for a while and said he remembered seeing the person in the picture near the East Market a few days ago. Then his wife had thrown him a look. As if struck by a sudden realization, he'd clamped up and started waving his hands, insisting he'd made a mistake. But Moran was sure the man knew something, so he had refused to give up. He dogged him and the whole walk home, pleading with him every step of the way. The man shoved him briskly out of the door and pulled at the wooden door bolt. Moran begged, frantic, please think about it again. We're in the East Market, and where did he go after? Please. I said I don't know. Makoshin. What the hell is a Makoshin? The commotion drew the attention of nearby ghosts, and a crowd soon gathered to spectate. The man bellowed angrily as he pushed against the door, heedless of Moran's hands still in the door frame. The door slammed roughly on his fingers. The pain was excruciating, but he didn't care about that right now. Moran swallowed the pain and refused to pull his hand from the narrow gap, using all his strength to push it wider instead. I'm begging you, please think about it again. I just want to know where he went after that. The man wrenched the door open and, taking no notice of the blood welling up on Moran's fingers, shoved him roughly back. I already said I don't know, he yelled. Go away. Oh no, and Moran's like leaving all the more breadcrumbs to point out to people that, oh, he's not dead. That's not good. Chapter 110. Shizun doesn't know about the little puppy's past. That sounds like he doesn't have a memory when Moran does find him. Moran wandered the streets alone. There were still a few ghosts drifting eerily about, and the bluestone steps were covered in lonesome clumps of moss, wet and slippery beneath his feet. Only after he had calmed down from that fierce struggle did he finally notice his fingers had been scraped raw and bloody. The crudely made doorframe had been covered in splinters, which had embedded themselves into his hand and made an awful mess. Fortunately, it was so dark now that the ghosts around him didn't notice. He stared quietly at his injured hand for a time, his lashes lowered. Compared to the pain in his heart, the gruesome wounds on his hands didn't hurt much at all. That kind of hurts my soul a little bit. Moran looked back at the door, shut firmly against him. He well knew that the man behind it wouldn't speak another word to him. He was no stranger to such rejection. Moran was intimately acquainted with malevolence, to the point that he could tell merely from the look in someone's eye or a handful of words whether or not his plea would have any effect. Truth be told, the moment that man had changed his tune, Moran knew that he wouldn't get any honest words out of him. It was just that he didn't want to give up where Chuaning's earth soul was concerned, so he had persisted until he was shoved outside and the door slammed in his face. It had been many years since he'd last been so brutally refused, but sometimes the passage of time didn't really heal anything. nor could coming into a happier circumstance change what was innate. Some things were simply carved into the bones. Shimon had once called Moran low-life scum. It was funny. These venomous words from the darling of the heavens hadn't made so much as a dent in his dignity, because he was right. Moran was what everyone called low-life scum. He'd been called fouler things more times than he could count. He was used to it. He glanced over his shoulder one last time at the tightly bolted wooden door. Then he slowly trudged away amidst the low snickers from the crowd of watching ghosts, a lone figure among those voices of ridicule and derision. The scene of abject helplessness, playing out once again after so many years, overlapped in his mind with the distant, fading memories of childhood. Moran put one foot in front of the other. The circumstances were so very alike, he couldn't help but recall those years when it had been just him and his mom. Oh, goodness. In these days, they hadn't yet settled at the pleasure house, but wandered the streets of Linyi near Ruthong sect. In those days, at least, he still had his mother. His mother loved him. He was still small, and she hadn't wanted him to go begging for food on his own, so she always left him in an abandoned firewood shed while she ventured out to sing and perform on the street. Moran's mother was dexterous and could dance nimbly on a bamboo pole, so she usually managed to earn a palmful of coins each day, enough for a piece of flatbread and a bowl of congee, shared between mother and son. Like any mother, she wanted her child to eat well, but Moran would take only a few bites before refusing any more, complaining that the flatbread was too hard, or the congee too bland, or that he was full. Little did she know that every time she sighed and ate the leftover half of the flatbread and half bowl of congee, her little boy was secretly watching. He would curl up and pretend to sleep, peering at her through slitted eyes, and would only relax when he was sure she'd filled his stomach. Then he would feel at ease despite the rumbling of his own. Nor did she know that every day after she left to busk on the streets at Linyi East Market, her child would crawl from the pile of firewood and sneak out to beg for food 2 streets away from her. His mother sang a beautiful song as she balanced on her 10-foot pole and danced upon it with her frail body. The ground below her was strewn with jagged rocks and ceramic shards were she to fall. All these sharp pieces would pierce her skin, but the spectators thought the danger novel and exciting, so she staked her low-born life and danced, all to win a smile from the moneyed onlookers. 2 streets away, her child begged door to door on the streets, a grin on his grubby little cheeks as he repeated the same greeting for good fortune over and over, hoping for a bite to eat. But he didn't get so much as a mouthful, at least not often. One day, the young madam of a wealthy family, pregnant, bored, and in a foul mood, was strolling the streets when she spied Moran's mother dancing on a pole. Let me guess, she, did something to injure her so she couldn't keep earning money with her dancing. Sorry. She stepped to the side and watched for some minutes, intrigued. Then she sent an attendant to go speak to the dancer. These broken rocks and ceramic bits you have are just for show, aren't they? Oh, why does this woman sound so spiteful? What's the sincerity? Our madam says if you replace them with knives blade up and dance over that, she will reward you with 10 taels of gold. That I'm feeling right now. The way this woman just is so frivolous with someone's life. I just want to wish bad things upon her, and I really shouldn't. Faced with such a cruel request, practically demanding her life, the mother's only response was, "I can't afford to buy any knives." The wealthy madam laughed and sent someone running to the ironware store to purchase 100 sharp knives, and her attendants arranged them upright on the ground. "Now dance," the richly adorned woman said gleefully, caressing her bulging belly. The crowd of fiends and demons, eager to watch the sport, soon clustered around, all of them decked in silks and jade that sparkled in the sunlight. Like vultures that had scented the stench of blood in the air, they gathered to feed on the corpse, necks outstretched and eyes glittering. "Go on, dance. Dance well and I'll pay you. There's tips to be had." The regions that fell under Rufung's sex oversight had no shortage of wealthy people. What they lacked was the excitement and liveliness of such death-defying wages. Those silks and satins, gold and pearls, closed in on the mother with the bamboo pole. They surrounded that penniless woman in rags, and so that woman, her life as cheap as wild grass by the roadside, smiled and curtsied towards a crowd of carrion vultures. She thanked them for their patronage and began a graceful dance upon the pole, light as a swallow. She danced above her blades, risking life to garner their favor. But skilled as she was, she inadvertently glanced down at the rows upon rows of wicked knives as she went in for the landing. In that brief moment of panic, her bamboo pole tilted infinitesimally. Alarmed cries rang out from the crowd as she fell. Though she managed to avoid the densest thicket of knives, she still skirted the edge, slashing her legs open. The crowd cried out again as blood spattered across the road. She ignored the pain and got swiftly to her feet, offering a smile as she lowered her head in apology. The spectators sneered. "His little missy's skills aren't quite up to the task. You'd better practice a little more," said one. "That's right, you gotta work extra hard if you want to make a living. You want to get far with half-assed dabbling," scoffed another. Very rude for a second, please. I want all of them to walk on glass, cut open glass, and see how they feel about it, and then come back and have those attitudes with someone again. Because clearly none of them have had a moment of ill fortune in their lives if they're this unsympathetic to people. A few of the kinder people, their eyes brimming with tears, were more sympathetic. Enough already. Look at the poor girl's injury. Hurry along to the apothecary, dear, and get some medicine. I don't. The woman hesitated. I don't have any money for medicine. The sympathetic ones faltered. Some sighed, while others lifted their hands to their jades and pearls, but none spoke. A few dabbed at the corners of their eyes as if deeply moved. How pitiful! Indeed, indeed. "Seeing as your life is so difficult, I'll give you some money," said the elderly woman with a big belly. She produced her bulging purse, fished out a handful of gold leaflets, then held them in her hand, and kept digging. Finally she unearthed 3 copper coins. She weighed them in her hand, returned 2 to her swollen pouch, then very solemnly placed 1 copper coin in Moran's mother's palm. Having given generously, the elderly woman allowed twin tracks of well-earned tears to roll down her cheeks. In tones of deep benevolence, she said, "Miss, you deserve this. Take it." I need to stop being frustrated because otherwise we're not going to get through the 20 pages I want to get through. But damn it, like really? Also, I just quickly want to check something. Okay. Okay. Thank you, the woman murmured hollowly, clutching the copper coin for which she had risked her life. Thank you. And what of that wealthy madam who had promised 10 taels of gold? She had already stomped off, cursing. The woman staggered after her on bleeding legs. She wanted to ask for the money, but the madam's attendants shoved her to the ground, cursing so loudly they couldn't be heard a whole street over. What terrible luck! Our madam must keep her baby safe. The sight of blood is inauspicious. Master will be worried sick if he hears. I'm late, but I'm gonna make dinner listening to this. Yay! I hope you enjoy making dinner. You still have the nerve to ask for money? You call that a dance? You're just lucky your blood didn't get on our madam, or else there'd be hell to pay. Scram! The woman was thrown roughly to the ground, but this madam and her attendants were of an affluent and influential family in Lanyi. No one was willing to stick their necks out for her. She twisted in pain on the ground, writhing like an insect in the dirt. No one helped her up. No one would open their purse for her. She had danced with her life on the line, all in exchange for a single cold copper coin. The kind woman who laid out her palm said it was what she deserved. She spared not a thought for herself, but she had earned only 1 coin today. What could she buy with that? A single piece of flatbread without any filling, not even a bowl of congee to go with it. And with her leg hurt, she wouldn't be able to dance tomorrow. And what about her little boy? He was still so small, so skinny, and now he would go hungry again. Yeah, see that's my thing, and like the problem in this situation is we don't know what the woman would have done to her had she declined. But if you have to choose between your life and the potential promise from a potentially unreliable person for like riches beyond what you could imagine, just choose your life because you can always try again tomorrow. Hopefully, like I mean, this is easier said than done, obviously, especially in their circumstances. But I think Moran would much rather go hungry for 1 day than lose his mother forever. And it was a real possibility with the thing that she had to do. But I do still get why she made that choice and like why she chose to do it. It just is sad. That thought pushed her over the edge. She curled up there in the mud and wept miserably, her voice raw and shuddering. The onlookers were unable to bear the sound. They sighed and began to disperse. Just then a dirty, foul-smelling child burst through the crowd. Mom! Mom! Moran ran to her, yelling like a trapped beast. He hugged her, a lowly child clutching his lowly mother, like a bug clinging to grass, like a straw dog clutching duckweed. Okay, I don't know what that's referring to, but okay. Surprise and panic flashed in the woman's eyes at the sight of him. She may have been weak, but mothers were strong. She stopped crying at once. Life was already hard enough every day, like falling asleep in hell and waking up in the same. She didn't want her son to see her weak and helpless. The tears on her face were still wet as she quickly arranged her features in a smile. Maya, look at you. What are you doing here? Mama's fine. It's just a scratch. Oh, but look. She stuffed the tiny copper coin clenched in her hand into his small palm. Moran shook his head over and over, tears carving tracks through the grime on his little face. There, that's enough for a piece of flatbread. Go on, go buy one. Mom will wait for you right here. then we can go home. The fact that she's still trying to keep up a brave face. Yeah, no, that's the thing, is it's not one, as you said, it's not one bad day, but it's just it's difficult to accept the idea of being in a position where you potentially have to trade your life for the ability to eat. You know, I hate it with every fiber in my being. And the fact that they were so, like, ready to humiliate it, just, humiliate her. Um, it just makes it so much worse. Sorry. I really should just stop going on tangents here. It's alright, Moran said quietly, wrapped in his mother's arms. I don't mind as long as. Wait, hold on. Oh, I think I accidentally skipped a page here. Home? Where was home? That decrepit old storage shed? Or that sheep pen they'd slept in, only to be chased out 2 days later? Moran fought back sobs. Fire burned in his eyes as he said, "Just sit here and rest for a while, Mom." "What are you going to? Don't do anything foolish." Moran dashed over and picked up a knife. He shouted loud and clear in his still young voice to capture the attention of the dispersing crowd. "Lords and ladies, please wait, please wait. We still have a special performance for your lordship and ladyships. Please spare a glance." Moran had possessed innate spiritual energy since he was a child, even if he'd never cultivated it. He was so much stronger than an ordinary person without aptitude. The boy held a sharp and sturdy blade in his hands. With a low cry he broke it into two, and tossed the two pieces to the ground. The crowd was astonished, and the few cultivators among them even more so. "Hey, the kid's not bad." "One more," called Moran. He picked up two knives this time, and slapped both together. "Nice!" Someone in the crowd clapped. "Do three." The little boy added another knife, and another, and the crowd grew more and more lively as the stack grew thicker and harder to break. "Gurga, Jiji, uncles and aunties, please spare some tips and I'll add more." Yeah, but this is dangerous because what happens when he reaches the point where he can't break through them? Were eager for a show. They tossed the cheaper copper coins they could find onto the ground before them. For the sake of those coins, Moran added knife after knife until his hands were slick with blood, and he really couldn't break one more. The carrion vultures flapped their night-black wings and scattered. Moran picked up those copper coins, cupped them carefully in his dirty little hands, and walked over to his dazed and teary mother. "Mom," he smiled, "we can get you medicine now." Her tears fell uncontrollably. "My child, my good boy, let Mom see your hands." "I'm okay." His smile was bright and pure. It scorched her heart. She pulled her son into her arms and hugged him tight. "It's all Mom's fault that I couldn't take care of you," she sobbed. "I've made you suffer so much from such a young age." "It's all right," Moran said quietly, wrapped in his mother's arms. "I don't mind as long as I'm with you, Mom. We'll get through it together, and when I grow up, I'll give you a good life." She smiled and wiped the tears from her eyes. "It's all right if it's not a good life, as long as you grow up strong and healthy, that would be fine. That would be enough." Moran nodded vigorously. Then he suddenly said quietly, Mom, if I make something of myself in the future, you'll never have to put up with this again. I'll make all those people just now apologize to you, and they won't. And if they won't, then I'll make them dance on knives. Silly child, don't think like that. The kind, gentle woman stroked her son's hair as she whispered, Absolutely don't think like that. Don't hold grudges. I want to watch you grow up to be a good kid. Promise me you'll be a good, kind person, okay? Moran was so young back then, like a small and tender seedling. Just a gentle nudge and he would learn easily in a certain direction, and his mother, uneducated but pure, was his first lighthouse. And so, little Moran thought it over for a bit, rather puzzled. In the end, he said, with an air of seriousness, Okay, Mom, I promise. Then in the future, if I make something of myself, I'll build lots of houses for people without homes and plant lots of food for people who don't have enough to eat. That way, no one will ever have to live like us again. Freak. Why does that sound so much like something Chuaning would have declared at that age as well? Sorry. I have my throat is scratchy right now, and I just realized I accidentally put on mascara. Big mistake. The kind people who can just all spare 5 copper coins each are some of the worst. Agreed. Are you guys holding up? Is it just me? um, Stared blankly for a while, then sighed. That would be wonderful. The little boy nodded in agreement and echoed, That would be wonderful. At that moment, neither imagined that a child who could say words like that would later tread through the fields of bone with his hands laved in blood, bringing the stench of misery and ruin as vultures and crows wheeled overhead, that he would become Emperor Tashinjun, Scrooge of the common people. And Emperor Tashinjun, that Scrooge of the common people, rarely, if ever, looked back on this chapter of his past. He did not honor the promise he made in his mother's arms that day, that promise spoken solemnly, with clear eyes and a tender voice. Back then, under his mother's guidance, however hard things got, Moran never hated anyone, though he did feel somewhat unsatisfied. Day after day passed just like this. Street-side performances were novel to the passerby the first time around, boring the second, and irritating by the third. Eventually, Moran and his mother could no longer earn a single copper coin with their work, and could only resort to begging. Moran remembered a kid from a wealthy merchant family. He was around Moran's own age and had a big mole by the corner of his mouth. He remembered that kid sitting by the gate of his family's sprawling courtside, with a bowl held in his hand. The kid was probably still learning to use chopsticks well, so he ate the golden crispy fried dumplings in the bowl by jabbing each one with a bamboo stick. He was a picky eater and would only eat the filling, then spit the wrappers out and toss them to the ground for the dogs. Moran walked over with cautious steps and stood carefully to the side. When the kid saw how dirty and smelly the little boy was, he started. Who are you? He screeched. Young master, Moran said quietly. The dumpling wrappers. Could I have them? Oh my word, I'm scared. You want me to give them to you? Why would I give them to you? You're not eating them anyway, so I just thought I'd ask. So what if I don't eat them? Our Wong Tai will. The boy pointed to the pair of fat dogs with sleek coats and said huffily, "We can hardly keep our dogs fed as it is. How can I give them to you?" "We can hardly keep our fat dogs fed." Moran smiled deferentially. "Then, if the dogs don't finish them—" "As if they won't! They got braised meat every day, and even that's not enough. These are just dumpling wrappers. 2 bites and they're gone. Either way, none for you. Now, shoo shoo." On hearing the words braised meat, Moran couldn't help but look at those dogs. All of a sudden he thought, with how fat they were, if cooked, they would be— He stared at the dogs and swallowed hard. "Please don't go there. Like, I'm too attached to dogs. I might need to skip that scene if that happens. Because I will feel nauseous. I can't." The boy noticed. He froze for a second, then yelled in shock. "What are you up to?" Nothing. You want to eat Wang Tsai and Wang Fu?" No," Moran denied in a panic. "I was just really hungry and couldn't help thinking about it. Sorry." That's not good. He's not going to take that well. But the little young master had stopped listening. At the words "couldn't help thinking about it," the blood drained from his face. How could a well-fed young master possibly comprehend that someone might think of his adorable little watchdogs as food? This kid was a freak. Frightened, he started screaming his head off. "Somebody, come! Hurry! Chase him away!" The household servants crowded around. Moran kicked and punched him before he could say another word. Under that heavy rain of blows, he scrambled to grab as many of the fried dumpling wrappers as he could. No matter how hard they kicked, he held them tightly in his hands and wouldn't let go. The little young master was terrified. He tossed the remaining dumplings to the ground along with the chopsticks and scurried away. Moran crawled over inch by arduous inch, dragging his small, skinny body that had been pummeled blue and purple. One of his eyes was too painful to open, the work of a well-placed kick. Yet he smiled happily as he reached out and grabbed those leftover dumplings. There were 2 left, with the filling still in them. One for him, one for his mom. Or both for his mom. Just the wrappers were plenty for him. But before he could leave with his prize, one of the servants' feet came down on the chaos and crushed those dumpling skewers on the bamboo sticks. The crispy wrappers cracked, and the ground meat filling was mashed to paste. Oh, this is painful to read. Moran gripped the dirty, broken chopsticks in a daze as kicks and punches rained down on him. He couldn't feel the pain, and because those dumplings could no longer be eaten, his tears began to fall, squeezed out between swollen eyelids to stream down that small face. So dirty, his features were hard to make out. All he had wanted was another child's leftovers, unwanted food. Why would they rather waste it, crush it, smear it into paste, than let him have it? Later, when Moran became a young master of Chushan Peak, many within the sect tried to suck up to him and curry his favor. On his birthday, he was inundated with gifts and well wishes from people he'd hardly even spoken to. The child who had once crawled on the ground and scrambled for discarded dumpling wrappers was now praised and fawned over, left and right, and yet standing before the pile of attentively selected presents, he found himself gripped by a vulgar sense of dread. He was afraid those presents would disappear, that they would be smashed, that something unexpected would happen and everything would be crushed underfoot, like those dumplings he had once held but never gotten to eat. And so, out of that mountain of gifts, he quickly used what was usable and ate what was edible. As for everything else, he dug out a secret little compartment in his room and carefully hid those splendid gifts inside. counting them every day, once, then twice, just to be sure. That sounds like some food scarcity trauma, which makes perfect sense. Shimon had made fun of him, pointing and laughing. Ha! It's just a box of pastries from Lin Anne's Breeze Bakery. If they go bad or go to waste, big deal. But look at you, shoving them all down your throat in one sitting. Will you starve to death in your last life or something? No one's gonna fight you for it. More accurately, he starved to death in his current life, Shimon, which you should know, potentially. So, shush. Moran had only recently arrived at Chushan Peak then, and truthfully still felt profoundly uneasy and insecure, so he only grinned in the face of his cousin's mockery, crumbs still clinging to the corners of his mouth, then lowered his head and opened another box of pastries. Shimon was amazed. What an appetite! Aren't you stuffed? Moran kept eating without a word. After a pause, Shimon said, if you're full, don't force yourself to eat. I get tons of pastries every year for my birthday too, but who can eat that many? Moran's cheeks were stuffed and bulging. He was actually choking a little from eating too quickly. He glanced at Shimon, sitting across from him, with teary black eyes. In that moment, he suddenly recalled that little young master he had met as a child, the one who could be as picky about his food as he liked, who ate the filling from his fried dumplings and tossed wrappers to the dogs. Shimon had probably grown up like that too. That's why he could so easily say things like, just toss it if you can't finish it, and no one's gonna fight you for them. Moran really, really, really envied them. Now that he was leading a life of luxury as the young master of a famed sect, he should be by all rights be able to feel comfortable and secure and waste and squander as he pleased, but he didn't dare. Instead, he picked up his cup and swallowed several mouthfuls of water to wash down the pastries obscuring his throat. Then he forced himself to eat more. Later still, he became Emperor Tachian Jin. Everything under the skies belonged to him. The most gorgeous beauties and finest wines, the most exquisite delicacies, gold and silver, pearls and jades, and treasured artifacts alike were gifted to him in a never-ending stream from every corner of the world. One day, a wealthy ore merchant arrived from Lenan with a rare 10,000-year-old black fire jade that had been discovered while mining. He declared that he wished to give it to Emperor Taxian Jun. These types, people who came bearing gifts for treasure in hopes of a noble title or an official post, or otherwise try to ingratiate themselves with the emperor and win his favor, were too numerous to count. Moran usually ignored them. But on this day, it just so happened that Chuaning had come down with a cold. Moran frowned slightly. Blackfire jade was excellent for warming the body. He preferred for that person to get better quickly. Sorry, I didn't like the word they used there. He was an eyesore lying around in bed all day. Thus, he agreed to see the wealthy merchant. The merchant was around his own age, stocky, with a large mole at the corner of his lip, from which hair poked up. I'm concerned about what Moran is going to do to this man as soon as he connects the dots. Moran sat upon the throne in Wushan Palace, his slender hands tented before him, and the tips of his fingers resting against his chin. He stared down silently until the greasy merchant's legs went weak and sweat soaked his back. A long moment passed before the merchant, shaking from head to toe and lips a-quiver, fell to his knees and began to kowtow again and again. Your Majesty, this lowly one, he stammered for quite a while without managing to say anything at all. His corpulent, never heard that word before, body trembling under his gold-embroidered clothing all the while. Moran smiled. He may have only seen this person once in his life, but he could never forget him. That year, that kid, the one with the mole by the corner of his lip, who had sat before his family's extravagant residence, displaying the kind of lavish mannerisms that Moran had never imagined he himself would ever possess. There he'd sat, jabbing his bowl of golden dumplings with his bamboo chopsticks, a greasy sheen on his lips to match the sheen on the crispy dumpling skins. You know, Moran said, still smiling, the fried dumplings at your place are delicious. He'd never actually tasted them, but he had obsessed over them for half a lifetime. From his seat on the throne, Moran observed the man at his feet go from terrified to astounded, to bewildered, to sycophantic. Okay? He muttered ubiquitously, I don't know how to pronounce that word, it's not the word I tried to say just now, that he'd send his chef to Chushan Peak right away as a gift to Emperor Tashi Jun. Moran had seen it then, clear as day, how many in this world would rather kneel to lick the boots of the strong than reach down to show the weak the tiniest mote of sympathy or kindness. Well, unfortunately, he's not wrong. Moran shook his head, trying to shake off these memories of bygone days. He rarely reminisced about his past, unwilling to dwell on this weakness of his. But the ordeal of asking door by door and being rejected door by door was so like these scenes of his past that the fetters deep within his mind fell open against his will. For a time, he was caught up in the darkness of his past. He stared off in a daze. So he had once promised his mother, when he was young, that he wouldn't hold grudges, had promised he would build countless houses to shelter all the people in this world who didn't have homes, so that they could smile. But he hadn't kept his word. And in the end, he had caused the death of the last person who treated him well. He had caused Chuaning's death, caused his own Shizun's death. Chuaning. Moran's heart ached at the thought of him. Absently he reached into his robes and took out that flimsy sheet of paper bearing Chuaning's likeness. The paper had become a bit wrinkled. He pressed his lips together and wordlessly raised a hand, intending to smooth it out, but at his touch, blood smeared across the paper. He jerked his hand back in a panic, afraid to dirty the portrait. He didn't dare touch it again. He walked from the 5th Street to the 3rd Street, asking at every door, unwilling to give up, but every ghost said the same thing. They'd never seen the man in the portrait. He strode through the endless night. It was so dark, that he began to suspect that he'd never reach the dawn. No matter how he tried or how far he walked, Moran finally felt fatigue settle in. He hadn't had a thing to eat or drink, and by this point was nearing his limits. By luck, he spotted a stall hawking wontons at the side. Wontons, you say? The very thing that drew Chuaning to the mortal world previously. Please let this be where he finds Chuaning. But also, I'm kind of wondering why he wouldn't be able to sense Chuaning in the same way he sensed the other half of his earthly soul. Maybe because it's not the same soul. Um, So he went over and bought a bowl, which he sneakily ate out of sight of the ghosts. All the food in the underworld was cold. No steam rose off the wontons. Moran brought out the soul-calling lantern, scooped up a wonton and held it out to the lantern. Does Shizun want some? Shizun, of course, didn't answer. So Moran ate the whole bowl himself. Then again, he said between mouthfuls, you never did care for wontons. All you like are sweets. Once I find you and we get back home, I'll make you pastries every day. In the silent night, one youth and one lantern sat by the lonely wonton stall. A breeze rustled past, bringing with it occasional withered leaves. In this moment, even the underworld seemed serene. Peach blossom cake, osmanthus sweets, walnut crisps, cow cake. He listed all these to the lantern while ticking them off on his fingers, as if in doing so he might entice Chushan to respond. After he'd listed a good number, he forced himself to smile and asked, Shizun, where is your other earth soul? The young man extended his slender hand and gently caressed the silk surface of the lantern. Just as he had that year, he turned 30, when Chushan died. When he had held the man's body in his arms and stared blankly into the distance and muttered, Chushan, I really hate you so much, then lowered his head and pressed his lips to that cold cheek. You knew you were around here, son? Suddenly, a voice like a broken gong spoke by his ear. The old man hawking the wontons was terribly nearsighted and had felt his way over to sit next to Moran. This man had probably died of old age in his own bed, his face tanned dark by the sun, was wizened and lined like a poplar tree in the desert. He produced a smoking pipe from somewhere in his burial clothes, placed it between his teeth, and began chattering with Moran, with that kindly nosiness unique to the elderly. That's a beautiful description. Moran sniffled, then turned to flash him a grin. First day. No wonder I don't recognize you. If you don't mind me asking, how'd you go so young? Chi deviation. Oh, the old man inhaled smoke from his pipe, though it remained dark and unlit. A cultivator, eh? Moran nodded and cast him a glance. Without much hope, he once again withdrew the portrait scroll from his robes and asked, Gramps, I'm looking for someone. This is my Shizun. He's new here too. Would you happen to have seen him? The old man accepted the drawing and hunched over closer to the light. He squinted at it for quite a long while through cataract-clouded eyes. Moran heaved a sigh and reached out to retrieve it. It's all right. I've already asked a lot of people. It's okay if you don't know either. Everyone else, I've seen him. Moran jolted. The blood in his veins coursed faster as he clutched at the old man's arm. Gramps, you've seen him? You're sure? I'm sure. The old man crossed one leg over the other and reached over to pick at his foot. Don't see lookers like that every day. It was definitely your Shizun. I'll believe it when we have Shizun in our sight. Moran had already shot to his feet, but then felt that he'd be rude and bowed respectfully to the old man. He looked up. Gramps, he said earnestly, please point the way. No need to be so polite, son. We're all the same boat down here, just ghosts waiting to pass on to the next life. We've only got 8 or 10 years before this life's memories are gone for good. My own son passed too early, so I've got a soft spot for you, young'uns. He wiped the tears from his eyes and blew his nose into his sleeves, then finally asked, You seen that grand-looking palace on the first street up there? I have. That's where my Shizun is? Yep, he's in there. It's the 4th Ghost King's 2nd palace. Oh no. The old man sighed. The Ghost King doesn't actually live there. He's built it to lock up all the beauties his lackeys snatched from the underworld. Great! The 4th Ghost King is a real lecher. He comes down here now and then to take his pick of concubines from the second palace. Moran is gonna murder him if he touches Chuaning. Well, Moran might just murder him regardless, but men and women both. He takes those he picks back to the fourth level of hell, and the ones he doesn't are supposedly given to his underlings as playthings. The old man sighed again. The world nowadays. He was still sighing when the little cultivator beside him scooped the lantern in his arms in an anxious flurry and charged off into the night like a hound on a scent. The old man the old man watched in silence for a second, then muttered, not without a dash of envy, "Must be nice to be so young, to be able to run so fast." Well, I'm just glad he didn't say something suspicious or like sinister after Moran left, because that could have happened as well. But okay, I think we are done for tonight since it's almost 10 past the hour. Thank you guys so much for coming to watch with me. I really enjoyed it, and even though like there was a little bit of crying with this like sad bit about the past, I have to say I appreciate that we're not like as much in the emotional trenches as we have been the last like two live streams. So that is very much appreciated. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys again next Tuesday. I'm not sure how many live streams we have left before we're at the end of this, but definitely see you guys again next week, and I hope you have an amazing weekend. 再见。Bye, guys.